Friends, it is the largest apartment complex fire in Houston's history, and it is still burning out on the city's near west side. Jan Carson has a live instant-eye camera at the Woodway Square Apartments, the scene of a 7-alarm blaze.
Dave, you can see behind me the firefighters are still trying to put out the flames in a number of buildings here at the Woodway Square Apartments. They are happy to report that finally, after 3 hours of intense firefighting here, they do now have this fire under control. A 7-alarm fire. They say they stopped it just short of Woodway Avenue. This fire, fed by intense winds from the south, went from building to building, rooftop to rooftop on the shingle roofs. Fortunately, only one injury to report, a resident who was burned. We don't know what condition he's in. There were a couple of firefighters who were overcome by heat and some by smoke. But as far as loss and damage, that, who knows? It can go into the untold millions of dollars. Tom Dickerson was one of the first reporters on the scene. He files this report.
The scene was one of pandemonium. Fire seemed to be everywhere as firefighters scrambled to battle the blaze, and residents of the apartment complex frantically attempted to save their personal belongings. The fire started in a building near the south end of the huge complex and jumped from roof to roof until within minutes almost the entire complex was totally involved in flame. Houston Fire Chief V.E. Rogers was in the middle of it and described how the wood shingled rooftops were the cause of the fire spreading so quickly.
The situation is the fire started about 2 blocks down inside the apartment, outside the apartment. The wind and the wood shingles are carrying it northbound with the wind, and it's catching every roof in the project on fire. Are you having problems with water, Chief? Water does not seem to be the problem. The problem is the flying branch and the wood shingles. We feel like we've got it cut off, and the next thing you know, the wind blows it on over to another wood shingle roof, and it's started.
At one point, firefighters had to resort to taking water from the apartment swimming pool to battle the blaze. Deputy Fire Chief Whitey Martin at one point during the raging flame told me it was a classic example of what firefighters call a firestorm.
That's what we call it. The fire is burning up above the second story. It's generating its own wind now. It's sucking it in there. That's what all this high wind is right now. We're experiencing that. And the flames blowing, smoke going in. That's right. It's just like you see an open fire, a campfire, something that's generating the draft at the bottom of the fire, and it's just creating a terrible situation.
Residents who weren't trying to save themselves or their property stood and watched the tragedy seemingly in a state of shock.
I think it's terrible.
You lose everything?
It's on its way out right now.
How'd you learn of the fire? How'd you find out about it?
I heard it on the radio.
You were at work?
I was sitting in the dentist's chair.
As photographer Ed Bragg and I moved through the area, we repeatedly heard witnesses describe the scene as, quote, incredible and unbelievable. Although it hasn't been confirmed, it is believed the fire started in an air conditioning unit. One thing is for sure, this fire will certainly go down as one of the worst in Houston's history. From the Woodway Square Apartments, Tom Dickerson, Eyewitness News.
And earlier at the height of the fire, when I walked among the burning apartment buildings, it was tragic to see the expressions on people's faces, the shock, the dismay, the alarm as they came home, saw their apartments in flames or perhaps totally destroyed. David Glott has a report on some of the victims.
It was the kind of disaster that nightmares are made of or Holocaust movies based on. For the residents, it was a devastating disaster. Realizing that the fire was spreading, the residents ran to their apartments, grabbing what they could. For some, it was not very much.
Got out of the shower and we saw smoke go by the window, and we came outside and it was about 5 apartments away. We never thought it would even hit our building.
We didn't even take it seriously. Like, we went in to get a couple of things, but we thought we'd come back out, you know, and go back in if it got serious. And all of a sudden it started going, and that was...
How much did you get out?
Hardly clothes.
Just cat, a dog, ourselves. It's just enough.
For others, more was salvaged, but not enough. This woman took dozens of antiques out of her apartment. She even carried out her birds. But inside, to be destroyed by the flames, were even more belongings. Unbelievable, she said. All the antiques my grandmother gave me are gone. Still others were numbed as they arrived home from work. They had lost everything.
I was at work when we saw it from the office, and by the time I got here, it was gone. It was all caved in.
This is all I could get. We didn't hardly have a chance to get this, but it's all we got. It's not much. We just moved here from Florida. And I guess, I don't know, I don't believe we have any insurance at all for it. I can't believe the way this fire just raged through the place.
Items of clothing, furniture, and memorabilia are scattered everywhere. As one resident told me, I work from 9 in the morning until 10 at night for a good life. and this is all that's left. It was gone in just a few minutes. David Glott, Eyewitness News.
As of yet, there are no exact figures on the number of apartments destroyed, estimated, however, to be around 500 or so. That means, of course, hundreds of people left homeless tonight, their possessions destroyed, and of course that means problems of where they're going to stay and what kind of conditions they will be living in for the next couple of days. Johnstown Properties has offered plenty of rooms for people who have been victims of this fire. Also other Lincoln properties. The Second Baptist Church that's located at 6400 Woodway is taking refugees. The Savoy Houston Hotel in downtown Houston has 100 rooms they're offering to those displaced by the fire if they can show proof that they lived in the Woodway Square Apartments. 50 Houston police officers have been called to the scene of the fire to control traffic and, of course, to try to keep away looters. There have been some reports of looting at the scene. They want to make sure that that does not continue. As of right now, we say that the fire is under control. Some of the firefighters have now been able to go home. They are being relieved by other firefighters. It's been a tough battle for these firemen. 7-alarm blaze that is now under control here at these apartments. And we're going to have more available on this fire as soon as we get it. Now let's go back to Dave in the studio.
Thank you, Jan. Ironically, even as this fire was still gaining strength this afternoon, the Houston City Council was to take up an ordinance to restrict the use of wood shingles on the roofs of multifamily dwellings. This fire today clearly shows how the flames spread first along the rooftops as bone-dry wood shingles burst into flame-like kindling. The city of Houston changed the building code back in 1963 before these apartments were built and removed a previous requirement that all buildings have fire-retardant roofs. Since then, the building boom of the past 15 years has resulted in whole subdivisions with wood shingle roofs on top of closely packed apartment buildings. This blaze today is the first to develop into a firestorm that threatened to wipe out an entire subdivision, leaping from roof to roof totally out of control. The ordinance brought before the City Council today would restrict wooden roofs on apartments, but not on single-family homes. It would not ban wood shingles altogether, but it would require builders to use a lot of shielding material that would raise the cost of a wood shingle roof so high builders probably would use something else. But even as this blaze was still growing, the City Council voted to table the matter for at least another 2 weeks. Later today, at the scene of this fire, Mayor Jim McCon said he'll bring that ordinance up again at tomorrow's City Council meeting. But for the burned-out residents of the Woodway Square Apartment, City Council action today was a little concern to them because the action came too late. Many spent the day sifting through the ruins, trying to pick up their lives after that 7-alarm fire. There wasn't much to be salvaged.
Clothes, furniture, I probably lost about $20,000, $25,000.
No insurance?
No insurance at all. Start from scratch.
This scene was being repeated over and over again in the ruins of the Woodway Square Apartments Wednesday morning as victims of Tuesday's 7-alarm fire returned to sift through the ashes of what was once their homes. Photographer Dave Davis and I are on the top of a fire department ladder truck, and from up here one can graphically see just how total the devastation was to this once huge and fashionable apartment project. From the air, the scene was even more eerie than it appeared to be on the ground, a classic reminder of bombed-out cities during wartime. Back on the ground, firefighters were still busy trying to extinguish the remnants of the biggest fire in Houston's history, as other firefighters were starting to clean up the mess left behind. Still others were helping victims retrieve what they could.
It's just my brass bed, we could see it up. And they're trying to get some of the stuff out of my bathroom for me, you know, just so we can have stuff to get ready on. But that was my pride and joy right there.
At a disaster relief center set up in a nearby church, victims of the fire took advantage of donated clothing and other help being provided by the Red Cross, Salvation Army, and others.
And you were totally burned out, right?
Right, everything.
Back at the scene of the fire, arson investigators had determined the fire's origin and were investigating the very likely possibility that the fire was deliberately set.
We're going to investigate as a suspicious fire due to the suspicious circumstances. There were several people on the roof at the time that the fire occurred, and therefore we're going to continue along that theory.
But for the victims, how the fire started isn't what's important. How and where to begin putting their lives back together is.
Never be able to replace any of this stuff. Just keep it in a bag or a box and keep some memories of it.
The ruins of the Woodway Square Apartments, Tom Dickerson, Eyewitness News.